All right, let's go. Number 10. The Beast of Gévaudan. In 18th century southern France, Gévaudan was a sparsely populated region of hills, forests, and isolated villages. Small settlements were scattered far apart, and dirt roads often disappeared into heavy mist. It was here that a string of mysterious attacks threw the entire region into panic. People kept reporting a savage creature appearing near the edges of forests, out in the fields, and along lonely paths. At first, many dismissed the stories as rumor, but the attacks kept happening and the death toll continued to rise. Witnesses described a beast unlike the predators people were used to seeing in the area. It was said to be larger than an ordinary wolf, with a long body, a broad chest, dark or reddish fur, and a strange-looking head. What made the story even more frightening was the way it behaved. According to many accounts, this creature did not just go after livestock. It targeted people directly, sometimes in broad daylight in open ground and close enough to villages to make it feel as if nowhere was truly safe. As the attacks continued, the story quickly grew beyond local folklore. Hunting parties were organized. Hunters and soldiers were called in. Eventually, the case even drew the attention of the French crown. Over the course of several years, dozens of deaths were linked to the beast, although the exact number is still debated. Naturally, theories began to emerge. Some believed it was simply an unusually large wolf. Others argued that there may have been several animals, and that over time the attacks were merged into a single legend. Even so, after a large animal was eventually killed and the attacks began to fade, the mystery never fully disappeared. To this day, the Beast of Gévaudan still exists somewhere between history and legend. Number 9. The Mongolian Death Worm. After the fear-soaked forests of Europe, the next story takes us somewhere even harsher. The Gobi Desert is a world of rock sand, hot winds, and emptiness. By day, it burns under the sun. By night, it turns bitterly cold. And out here, tracks can vanish within hours. In that landscape, local people have long spoken of a creature known as the Mongolian Death Worm. According to the stories, it has a long, dark red body, lives beneath the sand, and only appears for brief moments. What has kept this legend alive is not just its strange appearance, but the abilities it is said to have. Some accounts claim it can kill prey at close range with venom or some kind of electric discharge. Those details sound almost impossible to believe, but that is also what makes the story so hard to forget. In a desert where heat and distance can easily distort what people see, any movement beneath the sand can become the beginning of something terrifying. Over time, the story of the Mongolian Death Worm spread far beyond local folklore. Explorers and cryptid hunters made repeated attempts to find evidence. Several expeditions entered the Gobi, hoping to uncover tracks, remains, or at least a more reliable description, but no confirmed specimen has ever been presented. Many scientists believe the legend may have come from sightings of sand boas or other reptiles seen under difficult conditions. Even so, the lack of clear evidence has never made the story disappear. In a desert vast enough to swallow both footprints and answers, the Mongolian Death Worm remains one of the strangest creatures ever rumored to exist on Earth. Number 8. The Jersey Devil. Not every mysterious creature hides in some distant place that people can easily ignore. Some stories survive right on the edge of town, along dark roads, and in woods that people pass by every day. The Jersey Devil is one of those cases. For more than 200 years, people in New Jersey's Pine Barrens have continued to report a strange creature appearing in the night. It is often described as having wings, long legs, sharp claws, and a head so bizarre that no one can agree whether it looks more like a horse, a goat, or a bird. Many accounts also mention a piercing cry, the kind of sound that does not seem to match any familiar animal. What makes this legend different from many older stories is that it never stayed in the past. Across generations, the Jersey Devil kept returning in modern reports. People claim to see it dart across roads in an instant, glide over the treetops, or stand motionless at close range. In the early 20th century, a wave of sightings spread so quickly that several towns were thrown into fear. Schools closed, search parties were organized. Stories of strange screams in the woods made an already lonely region feel even more unsettling. Of course, rational explanations have always existed. Some researchers believe people may have misidentified large birds, deer, or coyotes. The Pine Barrens is a place of dense woods, weak light, and sounds that can echo in distorted ways. But that same environment is also why the legend has never truly gone away. Once a story is repeated long enough across enough generations, it stops being just a rumor. It becomes part of a region's collective memory. And even today, the Jersey Devil remains one of the most enduring mysterious creatures in American folklore. Number 7. The Bunyip. Imagine a still body of water at dusk just after the wind has died down, when the swamp in front of you suddenly lets out a strange sound. In many parts of Australia, especially in long-standing Aboriginal stories, that is exactly where the Bunyip begins. Some say it is a large creature that lives in the water. Others describe it as having a strange head, a heavy body, a terrifying cry, and a habit of showing itself only for a few brief moments. That uncertainty does not make the story weaker. If anything, it makes the Bunyip even harder to pin down than creatures with a fixed shape. The Bunyip is more than just a monster. For generations, it has been tied to deep water, dark marshes, and places people were warned not to approach alone. When Europeans arrived in Australia in the 19th century, they did not just hear these stories, they were quickly drawn into them. Some believed they had seen tracked skeletons or strange animals rising from the water. Newspapers of the time occasionally ran stories about supposed Bunyip sightings, turning what began as indigenous lore into a mystery that colonial society also became fascinated by. As always, rational explanations followed. Many researchers believe the Bunyip may have come from misidentified seals, large water birds, or familiar animals distorted by fog, darkness, and distance. Others have suggested the legend may preserve a distant memory of giant extinct animals that once lived in Australia. But like the murky water where it is most often said to appear, the Bunyip has never allowed a single explanation to fully settle. And that may be exactly why it has lasted so long in the human imagination as something that feels tied to the natural world while still resisting every attempt to name it. Number 6. The Thunderbird. Some creatures do not need to be seen clearly to become frightening. A shadow passing over the ground, the sound of wings beating down from low clouds, or the feeling that whatever is flying above is larger than any bird you have ever known can be enough to keep a story alive for a very long time. The Thunderbird exists right at that intersection of fear memory and the sky. In many native traditions across North America, it is more than just a giant bird. It is tied to storms, high mountains, and the raw power of nature. Stories about the Thunderbird did not remain trapped in ancient mythology. By the 19th century and into the early 20th, people across North America were still claiming to see enormous birds flying over rural land valleys and desert country. Some witnesses said they were larger than any eagle they had ever seen. Others described shadows broad enough to move across the ground like a small cloud. Old newspapers occasionally picked up stories like these, helping the legend sink even deeper into the public imagination. Of course, most scientists believe these sightings can be explained by misidentified large birds seen under unusual lighting at great distances or from poor angles. Vultures, golden eagles, and other familiar species can appear enormous when seen against an open sky. But the Thunderbird has something many other legends do not. The fossil record shows that North America was once home to giant flying birds with wingspans far beyond those of modern species. That does not prove the Thunderbird is real, but it does mean the idea is not entirely separated from natural history. It is that narrow space of uncertainty that has kept the Thunderbird flying through the human imagination to this day. Number 5. Mokele-Mbembe. From above, the Congo Basin looks like an endless stretch of green. Dense forests, flooded swamps, and tangled river systems make many parts of it difficult to survey even today. It is in that landscape that one of Africa's most famous cryptid legends has survived for generations. Local communities speak of a large animal living in rivers and swamps with a heavy body, a long neck, a powerful tail, and gray or brown skin. They call it Mokele-Mbembe. People have kept telling this story from one generation to the next, not just because the creature sounds so unusual, but because the land around it seems almost built to hide things no one fully understands. According to many accounts, Mokele-Mbembe is a plant-eater moves slowly through the water and usually avoids humans. But when disturbed, it can become aggressive. In the early 20th century, some European explorers began recording these stories and noticed that the descriptions did not match elephants, hippos, or crocodiles very well. From that point on, Mokele-Mbembe gradually became one of the most famous mysteries of the African rainforest. Over the years, several expeditions have tried to track down evidence. Reports have mentioned large footprints near riverbanks, broken vegetation in patterns that seem hard to explain, and dark shapes moving through the water at night. But no confirmed specimen photograph or biological evidence has ever been strong enough to prove the creature exists. Scientists argue that much of the story may come from misidentified large animals seen under poor conditions or from local traditions repeated over many generations. Even so, the Congo Basin remains one of the least fully understood ecosystems on Earth. And in a place where blank spaces still seem to linger on the map, the name Mokele-Mbembe has never completely disappeared. Number 4. Orang Pendek. Not every mysterious creature is unsettling because of its size. Sometimes what disturbs people more is something that seems a little too close to themselves. In the dense forests of Sumatra, where the trees press in tightly and visibility can vanish within just a few feet, local people have long told stories of a small, upright creature covered in hair and moving in a way unlike the animals they know. They call it Orang Pendek, which means short person. What makes these accounts so strange is not simply whether the creature resembles an ape, but the sense that it seems to stand somewhere between two worlds. It is not as tall as a human, yet it does not move like a monkey. Many witnesses say Orang Pendek walks with balance and purpose, scanning its surroundings before slipping back into the forest before anyone can get close. Explorers, forest rangers, and seasoned trackers have also reported brief glimpses of a short, dark-haired figure standing upright between the trees for a few seconds before disappearing without a sound. That is part of why Orang Pendek holds such a unique place among stories of unconfirmed creatures. Over the years, search teams have tried to collect footprints, hair samples, and more reliable witness reports. Some traces have been documented, but no specimen has ever been clear enough to convince the scientific community. Rational explanations have followed, of course. Some believe these sightings are simply misidentifications of gibbons, macaques, or sun bears. But Sumatra is a complex ecosystem, and even large mammals can remain hidden there for long periods of time. And when a creature keeps being described in similar ways across generations, the mystery around it becomes much harder to dismiss. Even today, Orang Pendek remains balanced on that thin line between zoology and legend. Number 3. The Yeti. Not everyone who goes looking for the Yeti says they actually saw it. In many cases, what appears first is a line of footprints pressed into the snow, stretching across a white mountainside before vanishing where the trail is no longer clear. Traces like these have kept the story of the Yeti alive in the Himalayas for centuries. In those high mountain regions where blizzards, thick fog, and dangerous terrain are part of everyday life, local communities have long spoken of a large, two-legged, hair-covered creature that appears in places few people ever reach. What made the Yeti one of the world's most famous mystery creatures is not just its image, but the place where it is said to exist. The Himalayas are vast, freezing, and still filled with valleys that remain almost cut off from the modern world. In an environment like that, distance can easily deceive the eye. Sound bouncing off a mountainside can resemble a strange call in the night, and a figure moving through snow and stone, even for only a few seconds, can stay with someone for the rest of their life. By the 20th century, mountaineers and explorers began recording similar reports. Some claimed they saw large, human-like figures moving across distant slopes. Others found unusual footprints or collected hair samples that could not be immediately identified. Later, many of those samples were traced back to bears or other familiar animals. For that reason, many scientists believe most Yeti sightings can be explained by misidentification footprints distorted by melting snow or even the effects of altitude on human perception. Even so, not every report disappeared once those explanations were offered, and that is exactly why the Yeti remains an unresolved question, part mountain legend and part reminder that there are still corners of the natural world we do not fully understand. Number 2. The Kraken. Long before humans had submarine sonar or deep-sea cameras, the ocean was already a birthplace for some of our greatest fears. The surface could stay calm for days, then suddenly turn violent without anyone knowing what was moving underneath. It was in that world that Nordic sailors centuries ago began telling stories about the Kraken, a colossal creature living far offshore so enormous that when it rose to the surface, it could be mistaken for an island. According to many descriptions, it had long tentacles, a massive body, and the power to drag entire ships beneath the sea. It is not hard to understand why a story like that would take such a strong hold on the human imagination. The deep ocean is still one of the least understood places on Earth. Even today, much of it remains unexplored. For people drifting across open water in earlier centuries, a huge shadow passing beneath the surface or long arms suddenly rising through the fog would have been more than enough to turn fear into legend. And once that story was retold across voyage after voyage, the Kraken stopped being just a creature. It became a symbol of the part of the sea humanity could never fully control. What makes the Kraken more compelling than many other sea monsters is that science eventually uncovered part of the truth behind the legend. The existence of giant squid and colossal squid proves that the deep ocean really does contain enormous strange animals that humans almost never see alive. Of course, that does not mean the Kraken of old sailor tales was completely real. Details like ships being dragged under may well have been exaggerated by fear distance and the chaos of the sea. But that is also what makes the Kraken so fascinating. Unlike many myths that survive on imagination alone, it stands on a rare boundary where an old legend of the sea unexpectedly brushes up against the biology of the real world. Number 1. The Loch Ness Monster. Some mysteries do not survive because they are rare, but because they keep coming back. Loch Ness is one of them. Set in the Scottish Highlands, this lake is long, deep, cold, and dark. Even in daylight, its surface has a way of revealing very little. For nearly a century, people have claimed to see something moving beneath the water, sometimes just a curved back breaking the surface for a few seconds, other times a long neck rising from the black water before disappearing again. Nearly a century later, the story of Loch Ness still has not come to an end. Since the 1930s, reports have appeared again and again, quickly turning the lake into one of the most famous mysteries in the world. Photographs, film footage, and eyewitness accounts kept surfacing. Some of those images were later questioned, and some were even exposed as hoaxes. Repeated sonar scans and underwater searches also failed to produce clear biological evidence. But strangely enough, that is exactly what has kept the story alive. It has always hovered in that uncertain space, convincing enough for people to keep believing, but never solid enough for science to confirm. Researchers believe that most sightings of Nessie can probably be explained by waves, drifting logs, swimming birds, distant boats, or optical illusions caused by light and weather. Those are reasonable explanations. Even so, Loch Ness has held on to a kind of pull that very few places ever do because the lake feels like a perfect stage for the unknown. Its murky water, deep bottom, and low light make observation difficult, and that may be why the Loch Ness Monster is more than just a creature from local legend. It has become a symbol of the idea that even in places where people think they have watched for long enough, mystery can still remain intact. Even though none of the creatures on this list have ever been fully confirmed, they all share one thing in common. Each of them exists on that thin boundary between legend, eyewitness testimony, and the parts of the natural world science still has not fully explained. From deep forests and snow-covered mountains to the darkest waters on Earth, this world is still vast enough to hold on to questions that remain unanswered. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoy content like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next video. See you in the next one.